Hello, this is Brant Hunt with you with Discerning What is True. Today is the 17th day of April 2025. Phil Langdon, this is Brant. I got knocked offline, and so I'm trying to get in touch with you again. I sent you a number to you. Hopefully, you'll get this in a few minutes.
Hi, Brian.
Oh, we are live now.
Okay.
So I changed it over. I bet it was on Wi-Fi, and it kept saying it was buffering. I said, you know what? I need to straighten this out. So, but what happened? It just simply went blank. Everything went blank. So
Yeah, sure. You froze
okay, it froze.
and
Okay,
nothing happened. So yeah.
okay.
Well, here we are.
Yes. So we'll try again. So we're going to be talking about the issue of the Book of Thomas. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Just want to make sure. Did I see if I got you everything? I'm seeing if you're make sure you're live here because I don't want to mess this up.
It says live on my screen, so
Okay,
it
okay, all right.
usually is.
Okay, good, good.
I think that's good.
So we haven't talked. What has it been? 5 months? It's a
Yeah,
while.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I see the background's all white in the back.
That's right. Yeah, as you can see, I've changed location. Yeah,
Yes.
I've moved. Not far, but it's a good few miles away. It's more country here. The house is a little box house. It used to be made for, these houses were made for factory workers.
Okay.
So everyone has to build extensions, but they got a massive long garden. The
Oh.
garden is 3 times the size of the house. So there's
You're
more work
kidding
in the
me.
garden than in the house.
So how close are you from the river? Thames? Is it Thames? Thams? Is that right?
The Thames,
Thames.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a 10-minute walk away.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just down the road.
Down the road. Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's my fridge in the background over there. That's the fridge.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just saw a door and it doesn't even have a door. It's just someone cut it out. It's like
That's right. It's just a cutout, yeah, into the kitchen.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm in the front room.
Okay. All right.
There's no books and shelves up yet.
That's
There's
cool.
going to be a whole library behind me in the future.
So I guess your books are all in boxes. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. You probably have as many books as I do, probably somewhere in different areas. Where probably from your college days and.
Yeah, I've got all that. Yeah, I've got all my notes from university, everything. Yeah.
You still have those too. Okay.
Oh yeah, I made little notebooks when I was at university, so I condensed all the courses into a tiny notebook so you can have quick reference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so all my courses are now in little notebooks, the entire course.
Are you talking? Oh, okay. Okay.
All
Okay.
of them,
That's
yeah.
interesting. So we got a couple people on here.
Hello.
Hello. I went back to widescreen here, so I could probably go back to exit full screen here. If there's anyone who wants to say hello, you can say. We've had all kinds of issues today. Hopefully, we will be able to get this through here. So the book we were going to talk about is the book of Thomas, and the question I was going to ask, and you're welcome to ask questions here. Why did you pursue the book of Thomas, it not being in Scripture, though it is in the non-Hammadi Scriptures also? Maybe this would be a good idea to give a foundation for people to understand what is going on with this.
Yeah, there's quite a few things to say about that, really. One of the reasons is because it's actually quite popular. Even though it's not in the mainstream of Christianity, it's a popular issue, the Book of Thomas, because people keep talking about it ever since it was found, suggesting that it's saying things about Jesus that we never knew before. Right. And the problem is that people love to interpret immediately. That's a big problem. They want answers immediately. They don't want to have to wait for the answer. Right. And when you read some of the quotes in there, they're impossible to interpret unless you know the ancient worldview.
Okay.
If you don't have that ancient worldview, you're going to pretend that you've got an interpretation for it that's literal and historical, when there's nothing historical in it whatsoever. It's all about metaphors, spiritual metaphors. The idea being that what is spirituality? You know, what is a activity that is called spiritual? Because people make a lot of things up. That's the problem in the world.
Right.
They make up what they think is being spiritual, and really you are spiritual already. So the question is honing your wisdom. Everything to do with what's spiritual is all about wisdom. See, and wisdom has an overview. It's like looking from the top of a mountain to see things in one go. So you don't have to turn your gaze and start thinking about other things. Everything's neat and tidy. You understand how everything is.
Right.
The worldview, it comes from previous angels, people who ascended and became angels. They wrote things down. And what we've got in the Gospel of Thomas is just that. That's angel writing, what you're reading.
Okay.
And if it is angel writing, you need to know what they're talking about. But mainstream Christianity doesn't have this interpretation, and it can't interpret the Book of Thomas as a result. That's a big problem, because people want to know what it really means.
Right.
You know, so when I read it, I can see where it's coming from and what it really means. So I simply wrote it all down. And I made a video for it on YouTube that you can watch.
Right.
It's 2 hours long. It's a bit long.
Right.
Because there's 114 sayings. You know, that's a lot of stuff to get through. A lot of it's repetitive. It's sectioned as well. Every few phrases that have a similar meaning will be together right after each other. Then you move on to another sort of set of ideas. And then you'll have the next 6 or 7 phrases that all mean the same thing, but they give you different ways of looking at the same thing. And that's very useful. It also helps you realize that you've understood it as well, because you're getting the same meaning from like 3 or 4 different sayings.
Well, you're basically getting an explanation of what was said before, and then another way of honing it down, or even, you know, saying it a different way, but yet giving it somehow a way to explain that whole idea, the first part of it. If that's what you're saying. Is that right?
Yeah. It's so old as well. It uses
Right.
an old-fashioned kind of language. I think I've seen arguments between King James Version and New International Version of the Bible. People don't like either. You know, some people don't like the King James Version because it's Old English, and they'd rather have something more modern, and that's what they got in the NIV. And people who love the King James Version don't like the NIV because it's modernized.
Right.
You can never keep everybody happy. You know,
there's arguments in the Christian circles that, you know, the King James is what it was first, and it's good enough for me, type of thing. So, you know, that's their perspective. You know, And then there are all these arguments. Well, we need something for us to understand such and such, and they would say, the old King James people would say, but you're taking away what was said here originally. You know, you know, type of thing. So, but then they're looking at it again, like we said before, as you say before, they're looking at it literally. They're not looking at it in an allegorical way of looking what's being shared through the scriptures. And there are also metaphors all over the scriptures too.
That's right. I mean, it's mostly metaphor anyway.
Right.
To be honest, spiritual metaphor specifically.
Right.
So whatever it talks about, there'll be wisdom in what it's saying. And that's the point, is to convey wisdom. The Gospel of Thomas does it very well, but in this old-fashioned style. And I think it's safe to say that people are susceptible to semantics. You can see it when you turn on your TV, that there's a lot of semantics coming out of your media that is effectively telling people what to think without actually saying that. You know,
right.
so people will just go on and talk about Jesus like he existed in history. We know that, we've established that, when we haven't even established that. So you can't just assume that everyone has to agree with you when you say everything in the Bible, in the New Testament, is historical fact, when it's not. It's clearly not. The Bible is the modern version of the initiatory materials in ancient mystery schools. It's exactly the same. That is the material. That it's all metaphysical. But if you don't know what metaphysics is, you're not going to be able to see it when you read the text.
Right.
See, that there's a lot of problems in the modern world. People think they know what they're talking about, but they don't. There's a lot of fakery in the modern world.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
Ton of
huge
it.
problem. So everyone's forgotten about the Hermetic principles, and that these mystery schools were focused on Hermeticism. Without a doubt, Hermeticism is just natural philosophy.
Right.
You see, and it's just pure logic. If it's
Right.
pure logic, anyone can work it out. It's really not rocket science. It's quite easy. And once you work out that structure, the idea that there is spirit and there is energy, those two things working together, and the spiritual thing is the infinite part, and the energy thing is the well-defined part. And you can see that the well-defined and undefined are exact opposites. So here's the basis of what's revealed in the Gospel of Thomas, as well as all the other texts. They're all the same. They're all telling you the same thing. And Thomas is a very thorough. It's a thorough look at wise sayings, if you like, and it is only wise sayings. There's no stories in there. It's just one parable after another. And it's extremely educational as well. It's really a teaching for people who want to become wise and understand what wisdom is. Wisdom is just the greatest depth of insight. That's all. It's not really that difficult, to be honest.
It causes people to ponder.
Yeah, it shows you what wise thinking feels like,
Right.
how you write it down. There's a lot of intonation in the way it's written. There's a lot of suggestion in the way it's written. It tells you things without actually saying it as well.
Right.
You have to ponder. By giving you a scenario, it's educating you in the way an angel would view that scenario, and an angel knows the end. Knowing the end, you know where things go. So when you see a young person behaving a certain way, you know where that behavior is going to get them.
Right.
When you're an older person and you see the youth, running around being childish, you know that they're going to get into trouble.
Correct.
And you know that you're not going to bother behaving like that because you haven't got time for all that trouble. But a kid doesn't think like that. They're thinking in the moment.
Right.
It's this kind of thing. It's this kind of distinction. An angel sees everything at once. So it knows the results of things as well. And so writing it down is about conveying that mentality, that view, as it were, sitting on top of a mountain, looking at everything at once. You can see from start to finish, So you tell people this is how it is. And they're reading it as if they're reading from their wise old grandparent. If you get me, it's like a grandparent talking to you as a child, the Gospel of Thomas. See?
Is it sort of like, in some ways, angels also know the beginning and also the end, so to speak?
Yeah, there's a statement about that. Apparently, Jesus makes,
Yes.
About the beginning, so that you know about the end already. It's explaining how.
You talked about the end, but do you really know the beginning?
Yeah. And that's just a sort of. There are certain statements in Thomas that they don't tell you off. They put you in your place. They tell you not to be arrogant. Effectively, there's a statement about being arrogant. You read a few spiritual books, all of a sudden you're a spiritual guru. No, no. It doesn't work like that. It's just saying that don't jump the gun. Don't go too far ahead. It's one foot in front of the other. This learning, and you can't be at the top of a mountain without having climbed it. So this world of convenience has a suggestion to it that we don't need to learn things thoroughly and properly anymore because it's already being done for you. AI is going to destroy a lot of things in a sense because it's going to give people the impression they don't have to learn anything because AI can just do it for you. And all of a sudden you'll end up with a planet full of people who know nothing.
Correct. Right. Because the whole idea simply is that AI, and like it says that you're advertising on my computer, you can write with AI. I'm like, then that means simply is that's not my thoughts. It's not one of my, and I'm like, I don't need this. But the point is, it's easier. and it's put out as very palatable for people.
Yeah.
Oh, it's easy to write this way, and it was such and such impress people. And I'm like, how do
Yeah.
you know that unless you're dumbing people down? And you can
Yeah.
see that clearly.
It's the same as a cook. I mean, a chef knows how to put raw food ingredients together and make a nice dish. But if you
Right.
don't know how to cook, it's easier for you to pay somebody to cook for you.
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
but that doesn't. If you're in the spiritual learning, that's not going to help you, because you have to learn things for yourself. You have to become the chef yourself. In
Correct.
spirituality, you become the chef. You don't become the one who orders food like
Yeah.
everybody else. You learn how to prepare the food yourself, and making the perfect dish is equivalent and metaphorical to making heaven. That it's as if you're learning how to be a spiritual chef, and you're making a perfect cake.
Right.
See, the perfect cake is always going to be there, and no matter how much of it you eat, you still got all your cake. That's
Right.
spirituality. In physical contrast, once you eat the cake, it's gone. There's another metaphor. The heaven is a cake that is always giving. It never gives up. It's always
Right.
there. You see what I mean? No matter how much of it you eat, it's still there. You haven't eaten any. It's as if you haven't eaten any. Yeah.
Well, that's why the scriptures has this a living word. It's living. It
Yeah.
never goes. It never dies.
Yeah, that's right. It's living because it's relevant. It's always relevant. Absolutely
And
truthful. Yeah, truthful with a capital T.
and when you take things literally, it is in a lot of ways literally it's dead. In other words, you're not seeing the whole apparatus here. You're just seeing a niche, so to speak. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
You see, and this is why people, like another thing is simply is Jesus did everything for me.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, where's the responsibility on your side?
Yeah.
Well, it's my responsibility is to follow him. Well, the only way you grow up is to grow up. So you have to
Yeah.
learn. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the same analogy you're saying earlier, but
Yeah.
it's excuses that people say, well, it's the grace of God and such. And then people say it's the word of God.
Yeah.
Is, authority such and such. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but it wasn't, it was written by God. You hear that whole inspiration type of thinking that's taught in the Protestant churches. It's inspired by God. It's the meaning it was written by the Holy Spirit, that type of thing. But in reality, it is, but it's not what people think. They think
That's right.
they're thinking again in the physical apparatus of simply is literal, is historical, type of thing.
Yeah,
And
without realizing the apostles represent aspects of your own brain,
correct.
and the conversations between Jesus and various apostles have to do with the aspects of your brain. For instance, the meaning of their names. The name Simon means listen. So
Yes.
it's the listening aspect of and receiving, which is the meaning of the word Kabbalah. Kabbalah means receiving, ultimately, and receiving knowledge. Effectively from the right side of your brain, but it's from God originally, who opens up that part of your brain to you, and it's very much about you. So what you're reading is about you,
Right.
and your relationship with your own redemption, which will come at some point in the future. So it's always an issue. But the conversation between Jesus and his apostles represent the conversations between your brain and your anointing. So when you're anointed, you have Jesus Christ in your midst. He suddenly appears in your midst, and you are the apostles, and you're going to be asking all these questions and contemplating through these very, very deep issues. So it's an explanation of what goes on inside an angel, effectively, when there's conversations between Jesus and his apostles. It tells you that. It actually tells you that in the text. But if you think it's a historical story, you're not gonna get that. You're not gonna see it.
No. And the reason why you don't see it is you're not ready to see it, right?
Yeah, you don't realize it's a metaphor.
Yeah.
But it's an applicable metaphor. It's not just an airy fairy idea that should be dismissed. It's a very applicable, useful metaphor. Yeah. Effectively, it means that the Bible is a sort of guidebook for newly born angels. That's what I would describe the Bible as. Somebody who wants to approach spirituality should be reading the Bhagavad Gita, But once you get there, I'd recommend the Bible.
Okay.
Yeah, without a doubt. Because the problem with the Bible is that people misread it. So if you're misreading it, where are you going to get someone tell you exactly what it means, apart from Bill Donahue, you know, who's one of the only people online who actually understands the language of the Bible?
Yeah, I don't know if he's still alive or not.
I think he is. Yeah, I think he is.
He used to have a place in New Jersey, a church. Well, that called it a church, but the hour simply is he would do videos. I've watched many of his videos in the past. It's probably been 5 years ago, longer. But yes, he's
Yeah.
done. He's basically basically used allegory as well as I recollect in my mind. He was doing a lot of his videos, so to speak. So
Yeah, that's right. He's
now I don't,
explaining the allegorical language in text. Yeah, because
right,
angels do that on purpose, because it reveals that you're opening the right side of your head, the right brain, as it were.
right,
The subconscious, you're accessing the subconscious, and it's much more dreamlike. It's much less. It reminds me of what's called cohomology in mathematics, which comes from the Penrose triangle. Are you familiar with the Penrose
yes.
triangle?
Yeah, I have
So,
a math book. I remember taking it. It has this narrow triangle, and it kind of you change the way you do it. The book. I mean, to change the book the way it is to look at it. It has a
yeah,
different shape to it.
yeah, it's a triangle in 3 dimensions, but one of the edges is actually twisted by 90 degrees, but it's drawn as if it's logical. It
Right.
logically fits together. But if you trace it and follow it, it turns out it doesn't make sense in any real physical terms. In other words, overall it looks okay, but sorry, when you zoom in on any of the 3 corners, they look normal. But when
Right.
you zoom out, it doesn't make any sense
Doesn't make
anymore.
any sense. Right.
It's called cohomology. It's about localized logic and overview, loss of logic, if you want.
Right.
You know, he applies that to energy.
Okay.
Roger Penrose. So locally, you can define a little bit of energy, but in the long run, it's actually stretched out over a large space, like a wave of energy, as it were. It's more to do with physics. But yeah, the right brain is dreamlike. You can go from one room to another, and they're not connected in any logical sense. But in your dream, it makes perfect sense.
Right.
You know,
that's why we sometimes people with a brain, he has a right brain, he tends to be masculine, and the left brain would be feminine, as many people have given illustrations.
Other way around. The left brain is associated with masculine.
Okay, I meant left. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
logic.
I said it wrong. I'm sorry, left. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah, that's easy to do. Logic is apparently masculine, whereas the more artistic, the continuity. So you can apply discreteness or logic and continuity or artistic nature, if you like. Overview is the right brain. It's like the view from the top of the mountain is a great overview. So it's very much a right brain thing. Angelic talking and thinking.
Well, it's
That's why they use metaphor a lot.
right.
Dreams are very metaphorical. You know, you can have a conversation with a giraffe, but it means something to you. But
Right.
it's not literal. It's the same thing with the
Right.
Bible. Same thing.
Well, that's why a lot of the children's stories are based upon right brain. I'm not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. It's to encourage that kind of it's to encourage the right brain. Yeah,
To
that's
be
right.
artistic.
Yeah.
To eventually, that's how we come up with art. We come up with the issues of music, creative writing, so to speak, poems, that type of thing.
Especially sacred geometry.
Right. Yeah.
Sacred geometry that you find in churches, nothing but sacred geometry, is very much a unification of left and right, or male and female, or subjective and objective, or well-defined and undefined. You know, the infinite nature is a circle, but within the circle, in a sacred geometric shape, you're going to have a well-defined object like a pentagram or a hexagram, you know.
Yes.
or
Yeah.
an octagon, anything, any of the polygons fit inside a circle. So sacred geometry really is looking at a visual explanation of how the infinite and the finite work together, and that's a great education as well.
I was thinking about the artwork that was done back in the 1500s and 1600s. You see a male and you see a female, and also the idea of born again. You have a child there. So what happens? The illustration in the artwork is the meshing the two creates another child, so to speak, but it's not a child. It's the new you. It's no longer a division between the masculine and the feminine. It becomes unified. So you're no longer, in a lot of ways, I say you're no longer divided, so to speak. You become unified, become one, which is
you become one with your own spiritual nature.
Right.
You bring your inner nature forward out into the physical world.
Right.
Which is one of the sayings of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas, that if you don't bring forth what's within you, what is within you you'll die. You won't make it to the next sort of.
You won't make it to the next level, which is to become an angel.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So you have to bring forward what's within you. That means you have to bring your spirituality out, and that means ascending.
Right.
He's saying you need to ascend.
And we also, I'll just go off a little bit tangent, but like we're showing this whole thing here, as I was showing you earlier. These are, people see just 12 disciples, but the key is simply is that people, we just look at these things and we don't see what's really being shown in this artwork in some way, some more important information. And the colors of the people, disciples, and then you also you call them the 12 noetic signs, or what is going on in your brain. So this is part of, I call, your characteristics of who you are. Is that correct?
That's right. Every person, it's the archetype of every person's brain, the 12 apostles, and that picture is equivalent. There's an equivalent picture in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, of the head of a newly anointed person, a god, an angel, call them what you will. This person has been anointed, and it's a picture of two goddesses, Isis and Nephthys, looking to the central part, and in the middle you have a what do they call that? A jed pillar. There's a jed pillar, and on top of the jed pillar is an ankh.
Okay.
An ankh with its it has two human arms up like this, and it's holding a great big circle of lamb's blood. Right. Yeah, which is basically the red moon. But the moon is feminine, and behind it is the sun. You don't realize that you're looking at an eclipse because it's painted red. So you don't think of eclipse. But that's an eclipse.
Is that all significant, what they call the moon, sometimes blood moon or red moon, with the moon being in front, and
astronomy, they'll talk about a blood red moon or a golden moon, because the moon has different colors at different points. Sometimes it's white, sometimes it's a bit yellow, and every now and then it's red. Even rarer when it's blue. Once in a blue moon, that expression comes from there.
Right.
But that's just physical stuff, and physical stuff is just noticed for having similarities to this metaphysical concept.
But these are symbols to a man who's looking to see something, even out the outer part of what is here, could sense that what's being related in that, even in the physical.
It's a way of relating. I guess it's a way of commemorating a relationship.
Well, it's sort of like a symbol, some symbology in a lot of ways too.
It doesn't mean that when the moon is physically red, that everyone's going to become anointed or anything like that.
Right. No, it has nothing to do with that. No.
So anyway, this ancient Egypt picture, the two goddesses, you got the jed, you got the ankh, holding a circle of lamb's blood, the blood red moon, and there are 6 baboons representing Thoth.
Yes, I was wondering what those 6 baboons mean.
Yeah, they represent Thoth, and the reason they represent Thoth is because Thoth associates with the moon as well, and baboons will bark at the moon. So
is that literal or just that?
That's literal. Yeah, they make noises when the moon's out, at full moon, like a howling wolf.
Okay,
It's a similar kind of idea, and so there's associations with baboons and Thoth.
So the Egyptians were really actually relaying the information in their artwork, telling what. Okay, yeah. I was wondering
yeah,
what
that's
that was
right.
about.
It's exactly the same metaphorical inference that you get throughout spiritual paintings, for instance. Or
Well, the idea, you remember the idea there's 14 women in the same above this. I don't know what it's called, but it's in Egyptian art.
That's right. That's the Hall of Judgment.
Yes, yes. And the Hall of Judgment simply
they're
is
above.
Right, they're above. Everything else is going on, and
right.
There's again, and it actually, there's only 14 parts to a woman, and there's 15 parts to a man.
That's right.
And most people they don't look at these little things that kind of are showing something, but the 14 parts, that being a woman, there are 14 women, reveal simply there's 14 parts. But I'm sure it's more than that. I'm sure there's more than that. Could be. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, there's 14 figures looking in one direction, and the actual person who's apparently being saved is on the left-hand side of them.
Right.
So yeah, so he's the 15th part that's separated in terms of symbolism of removing the phallus, because the body becomes the phallus in spiritual union.
Right, because it's actually what you call it. I can't think of it now. All of a sudden, I got to bring ejaculation.
It's spiritual ejaculation, effectively. That's right. That's right. Yeah. If your body is a phallus, you're basically the idea is you're making love with God.
Right.
And of course, there's semen when you make love, and in spiritual terms, it's your spirit that leaves your body as if you are semen.
Right.
Yeah, right. In ejaculation. That's right. It's considered to be it's used as a metaphor.
Correct.
Correct. If it's in nature, if that is in nature, the same archetype exists throughout nature. Therefore, you can use the structures of the natural world to convey metaphorically to other people that aren't used to thinking like this. You know, for example, being an angel, what's it like? Well, it's a lot like being a gardener.
Correct.
Being an angel is being a gardener. So what you do in your garden is what you do metaphorically as an angel. You cultivate plants, and the plants you cultivate are other people.
Correct.
See, so I'm cultivating people by talking. I'm being a gardener. It's exactly like looking after plants. It's the same principle. So we can use natural world principles to talk about spiritual issues like ejaculation, which is sexual and associated with devilish nature, just for its own sake. But really, in the ancient world, it was used as a metaphor for spiritual union. And that's why you have people wrapped up in bandages all the way along their body, because they're being turned into a phallus.
Right.
And the association with death is there as well, because ascension is like death.
Correct.
It's equivalent to death. So
it's the dying of your, so to speak, of your old self and becoming a new.
Yeah, which really it just means that you're seeing things from a fresh perspective.
Different perspective, right.
Yeah, it's fresh and it's new. You've never seen it before from that perspective. So you're dead to the old life.
Right.
But you're not actually dead. There's no dying.
No, right.
Yeah. But it's all metaphorical. Yeah. So this image in the Book of the Dead, actually, of the two goddesses and the 6 baboons and the Ankh on the Jed, that represents your head. It's like looking at someone's head from the top down.
Okay.
And the 2 female goddesses represent your 2 brain lobes.
Okay.
So the picture is telling you metaphorically that you're looking at the head of an anointed person, which is exactly what you've got in Da Vinci's Last Supper painting. So all 12 apostles are there representing the entirety of your brain. And Jesus is there as well in his red and blue, lamb's blood and holy water, because he is both of those. And he's in the middle. So you're looking at the head of a newly anointed person with Jesus established in the center. That's what it is. That's what it represents. It's not a historical event that
No.
occurred 2,000 years ago where people gathered in the room. I know they say that here's the room where the Last Supper was in
But it
Jerusalem.
also uses the word upper room, which means your head.
That's right.
They gather at the upper room, which means
That's right.
simply they met in an upper room. They did so it wasn't in the lower. So this reveals simply is to also do with the air sign, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's also your upper room up here.
That's
And
right.
people don't. There are little niches here that people don't see. They don't understand why did it say second floor? You know, something of that nature. No, it didn't say
Yeah.
second floor. It said upper room. And it's
Yeah,
a
that's
way,
right.
little words that can give you some kind of clues. You'll notice that all of them are at one table, which reveals simply unison.
Yeah.
Would be also, you know, they're all united. They're not separate. They've come together and they become one in a way.
That's right.
Also,
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. The person who's being anointed is represented by Matthew, the figure on our left as we look at the painting, who is next to Jesus, and together there's that V shape between them. But
right.
if you complete the V shape with two more arms, you get a capital letter M, which is in Hebrew is mem, which means water. And water is the classic metaphor concerning metaphysical spirituality, in other words, anointing. So
Right.
it's confirming that we're looking at a newly anointed angel's head when we look at the Last Supper painting by Da Vinci. And of course, the three windows behind represent the three aspects of spirit. That's 1, 0, and infinity.
Anything. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also,
So
I was looking at it differently. You, like you said, M. I was looking at the V. That the two become one. In other words, the
yeah,
V.
you've got that there as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, water represents truth, which is spirituality or metaphysical. So you've got you notice the V shape, but you don't notice the capital letter M so readily when you look at it. But if you look at their other arms, it is basically making a capital letter M, which represents truth
Yeah.
or water.
I don't know if I can get it up here close to people.
If we can see that. Yeah, between Jesus and on the left is Matthew. Together they make the letter M.
Yeah, I can see it.
Truth is found. So the risen angel is represented by Matthew, and the cloud of heaven is Jesus.
But that's
So
why she looks like it's like she looks feminine.
that's right. That's right. A woman. Yeah, it looks like a
right.
woman. Sophia, effectively. Sophia meaning wisdom. He's
Wisdom,
gained
right.
wisdom. But it's not just Matthew, because Matthew's one of the apostles, that he just shows that they know what the salvation moment is about. It's about you in facing the cloud of heaven, and only the two of you in the abyss by yourselves. It knows that. I can see that in this ancient symbolism.
Right.
So people knew about it. I mean, you can see the same symbolism in Hampton Court and the park next to it called Bushy Park.
Yeah, that's in London, right?
Yeah, that's not far from me.
And
Hampton Court would represent Matthew. It's like the person who's risen, and next door is a cross-shaped feature in the park made of trees, and the trees are all planted in very straight lines, and they're very long, and they're perfectly straight.
Yes.
And there are 10 rows of trees going down the main avenue, because there are 10 beams coming out of the cloud of heaven from its top.
Okay.
So everything, it tells you that the people 500 years ago knew about salvation. They knew exactly what it was and what it looks like, because that's what's been passed down through generations, that knowledge. There it is in Da Vinci's painting as well. It becomes quite obvious when you know about it, you know.
Yes. So anyway, we kind of got a little bit off, if that's okay. It's been why I know in some ways, like we said earlier, in a way with the book of Thomas, why do the established church or Catholic Church, whoever actually put this book together, the Bible, why do they reject the book of Thomas and others? Is it because simply, I think we said the answer to it earlier was simply that they couldn't. There's not. What I'm trying to say simply is, all right, for clarity, there's nothing wrong with the Bible. In other words, the Bible's nothing wrong with it either, even as its context, except we are looking at it in a literal or historical fashion. But if we wasn't looking at a historical literal fashion, we're looking at metaphysics. If we're looking at their names, who the people are, such the strange names like Zechariah, who or Malachi, Obadiah,
Zebedee. Yeah.
who what kind of his names sort of stand out. These are not normal names that people give their children today. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. I mean, I know that certain Christians, they'll name their child Caleb. That's become somewhat a little bit popular, name, which is from the Bible. A lot of Christians do, not a lot of them, but used to, would name their children a lot of times due to quote unquote biblical names. His name is Noah. Now I don't know if anybody's named their child Lot or whatever, but the point simply is, because Lot's not seen as a positive person, and even he's the one who and his wife turned into a pillar of salt, so to speak, metaphorically. Though it's not again, people there are people who are actually looking in biblical archaeological works, looking for that pillar of her. Now, I mean, they're looking for this. Same thing with the issue of God supposedly consumed what's the place with fire with Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah. No, that's metaphorical. Yeah,
it's metaphorical, and people think it has to do with something else. It's actually to do with it has to do with Sodom and Gomorrah has to do with your head. Is that correct?
That's correct. They are your brain lobes. Yeah,
brain lobes. Right.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Like Samyaza and Azazel, the two leaders of the fallen angels, they represent your brain lobes as well.
I didn't know that.
They're just your brain lobes. All their attributes are attributable to your brain.
The other thing
is no people.
Well, here's one I got just popped in my head when you said that. When the sun stood still, you remember? I don't remember who it was. It was Joshua, I'm guessing, but he put his arms up. There was another one because he kept his arms up. Supposedly the army was winning. That is the Israeli army, such and such, not Israelis, but the Jews. And then when he dropped them down, they started to lose, and someone had to prop them back up, so to speak, because you keep your hands up like this all the time. You're not going to be able to do it within even 5 minutes, so to speak, or 10 minutes, such and such. But and then also the sun stops or stands still, and people think, oh, that's literal, but it's not.
Kind of, yeah. The standing still sun is always referring to solstice. Because the sun rises 3 days in a row at the same point on the horizon before starting to make its way back across the horizon. From
the same way with when winter comes to the 3 days before Christmas, 21, 22, 27.
Yeah, winter solstice.
Right.
Yes, it stands still for 3 days. 3 days in a row, it rises in the same spot. That's right. And number three is metaphysical, so we can use it as a metaphor.
Right.
Yeah, and of course you're talking about holding your arms up. That's exactly what the
that's
image
what
in the Book of the Dead is.
Yes.
It's the Ankh holding up the lamb's blood.
Right.
He holds it like this. This is a symbol of joy as well. This says joy, and of course ascension is joyous. It's the most.
It's almost like you remember. You may not remember, but Hallelujah, when choirs sing or say Hallelujah, Hallelujah, whatever, and they put their hands up, just like praising to God. It's actually giving glory to God.
Yeah, it's saying we glorify ascension. We recognize it. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe they don't know that, but that's what
most people don't know that. I'm sad. So
You were saying the why the Gospel of Thomas is not included in the Bible as it is because it's a set of sayings. It's not a gospel as such, even though it says Gospel of Thomas, and it is actually in the Bible. Some of the sayings in the Gospel of Thomas are literally in the book of the Gospel of Matthew.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I recognize some of them in the Gospel of Matthew, and pretty much all of them are represented in the four Gospels. All the sayings in Thomas are in the four Gospels in other guises. They're written in different ways. So what you do is you get the Gospel of Thomas, which is 114 potential sayings, and you write a gospel, and every now and then you take one of those sayings and you just dump it into your gospel as if it's a story. So that it is source material, the Gospel of Thomas, for writing gospels.
Okay.
So all of it, all the stuff in there, I recognize in the gospels anyway. When you interpret it correctly, you'll recognize it in the gospels. See, but the way it's written is sometimes, I guess it was, the Bible was somewhat geared towards everyday people, you know, because it's, the material is supposed to be for initiates, and an initiate had to be chosen in the first place as being a person adequate to fulfill the issues of initiation. You know, if you're a childish person in your 40s, you're not going to be chosen for a mystery school, because you're going to be childish for a long time, and it's going to take a lot of work. But of course, we're the one who work on ourselves, and if you're not prepared to do that, then an initiatory school, a mystery school, isn't going to take you in, because they know they're wasting their time.
Right.
Why waste your time on someone who doesn't want to learn? So not everyone went to a mystery school. Unfortunately, it is such that humanity is born completely ignorant. Not necessarily stupid. Stupid and ignorant are not the same. Everyone's born ignorant, but dealing with that is up to the individual. And if you're not prepared to do that, then a mystery school is not going to be interested in you in the first place.
Well, they're going to see the characteristics of what you're not ready.
Well, you know that a wise elder can see through a childish person straight away.
Right.
They can see it. You know, you can't fool.
Well, it's just, the same thing we were saying earlier. That simply is that, you know, the young people today at, 10 years old acting very foolish, or teenagers, whatever. You being 50 years old, it's like, you don't even fool up with them, because simply you know that their characteristics, if they continue down that road, they're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, and you're going to get in trouble with them if you hang out with them. There's another problem, right? So, the Gospel of Thomas is really a source material book that anyone can use who's writing a gospel that knows what they're doing. And you can see whoever wrote those gospels knew what they were doing. They're very clever. They're very well written. You know, they sound historical, but it's to make a story that you can relate to as someone who doesn't know these things yet. It's a lot easier to focus on a person like Jesus and have a definitive registration for what spirituality represents in a story like the Gospels, instead of just talking about a cloud in an empty void that you cannot relate to.
Right.
It doesn't attract you in the first place. It means nothing to you if you hear about it. But if I tell you about a person who had the worst possible life, and that his life was worse than yours, so stop complaining and look how wonderful he was at the same time. Isn't that fantastic? This is your mentor. This is your it's an old role model.
Yes.
Jesus is the role model for any Christian, because they always say, what would Jesus do in this circumstance?
Right.
See, so Jesus personifies an angel, any angel, really. And I think the reason the Gospel of Thomas isn't in the Bible is because it's just a collection of sayings that you use to make Gospels, and therefore it is in the Bible in the form of the 4 Gospels, in fact, because I recognize all of its content in there.
Could you think, or could you expound maybe a little bit more on the idea simply is that the Book of Thomas was possibly written before they put the canon of the scriptures together?
Yeah, I almost guarantee that that's the case. Apparently, it originates from Syria. It's around that area, around what we call Israel now and Syria. Those areas. There was a Thomasine
churches. There were Thomasine churches.
That's right. Based on wisdom, effectively, revering this kind of angelic wisdom. You'll see the same type of thing in the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox Church is very much into the wisdom aspect of the Bible, as opposed to the historical nature and recognizing the Pope. They don't recognize the Pope.
No, they don't.
Orthodoxy. So they're more like the old mystery schools, Orthodox Christianity. It's a bit more like that. which I'd lean to more personally. But yeah, you've got the Middle East, the remains of the ancient world around the Mediterranean. You know, it really is the remains of the old wisdom world of the past, the ancient Greeks, of course. And then
you would consider that, you would consider even the Egyptians, because they really basically are in the ancient world too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, the Greeks learned from the Egyptians first.
Right.
Yeah, and the Egyptians basically repeated what was in Babylon before them.
The Chaldeans?
I don't know specifically about the Chaldeans, but I can tell you the Sumerians and the Babylonian epics are literally repeated in Egypt as the myth of Heliopolis, which then became the Book of Genesis.
Okay.
They're equivalent. They're the same. It's the same principle. It's Hermetic principles displayed in a slightly different way. You know, the Egyptian pantheon called the Ennead, involving Osiris and Isis, his sister, and the previous gods Geb and Nut, Tefnut and Shu, coming from Ra and Atum Ra. All that system of the Ennead means 9. There's 9 of them.
So you're saying Egyptians borrowed or either from
Babylon?
Babylon.
Yeah, it goes back to Babylon because they had the Anunnaki, and the Anunnaki are these gods.
So that's a good. We need to solve this issue with the Anunnaki, because this is really people really just completely.
It's the Ennead. It's the same as the Ennead. If you want to understand the Anunnaki, just read the Myth of Heliopolis. I've made a video about it, so you can understand it. It's about personifying aspects of reality, so that you can understand creation. What I
was saying simply is that part of simply most people don't understand. Simply they take an Anunnaki as being something to do with aliens, all this stuff, which has gone way off on a tangent, which is not true.
That's right.
And but people they gobble this stuff up. So it's like candy. They like, oh yeah, I like that, such and such. But again, and I don't want to mean that people, they tend to go to those type of things. They don't relate to deeper things because they're not, in reality, they're not ready.
Well, they're certainly not versed in the Hermetic principles and the metaphors that have been written about the principles. There's 7 principles. So now the more modern one we have, where it's not even modern, is the Book of Genesis. That's the closest we've got in the West to the Hermetic principles, because it tells you about them in the first chapter. Chapter 1 is all about the Hermetic principles. It says 7 days of creation, but that's a semantic
going
way
back.
of talking about the 7 principles. Yeah, it's just semantics. And if you go to Egypt, you've got the Ennead. Number 10 in the Ennead is Horus, of course, the risen one.
I didn't know
because at the end of the Ennead, you get redemption, because the Ennead is all about creation and how it's structured and made. And of course, what's it for? Well, it's for your redemption. So your redemption is personified by Horus, who succeeds and becomes king. And all the kings of Egypt were basically Horus. The idea being they'd all become redeemed with God, and therefore they had the right to rule, because they know the difference between right and wrong to the deepest level. And only someone like that can be a king and a proper ruler with fairness and what have you, and compassion. So there's the principle there, and you find exactly the same in the Babylonian Enuma Elish, where Horus is effectively somebody called Marduk.
Yeah, I've heard of that name.
Marduk is the hero. Horus is the hero in Egypt, but in Babylon is Marduk.
Is it Montalk, something like that?
Marduk, Marduk, I think they spell it.
DUK, okay.
Marduk, yeah, he's the hero, yeah, and it's very convoluted. It's very sort of messy, the Enuma Elish, and if you don't know about the principles and
you get lost.
Heliopolis, you won't recognize it.
You won't recognize it.
Yeah, you won't be able to see it in the text. I've done the Enuma Elish, actually. I just have to write it up and in a formal way for somebody else to read. I've gone through it in detail. So I know exactly what it is and what it's about.
So you read the works, is what I gather.
Yeah, Enuma Elish. I've written down the interpretation already in a Word document, because it becomes quite obvious what's going on. Originally, we were talking about the fact that the ancient world has left all these things behind, and all we've got is what they've left behind in pictures and writings. And one of those is the Gospel of Thomas. When those sayings were put down on paper or parchment, I don't know. Apparently, well, obviously they're supposed to be written after Jesus, apparently, because it's the sayings of Jesus.
Right.
Therefore, it can't be any older than 2,000 years.
That's not necessarily true, is it? In a way, that's just only what has been written down. But that was talking about those who already knew this stuff are trying to pass it on to the future.
Yeah.
Which those who even that time they got it from someone else to pass it down to them.
Yeah, it gets rewritten. It gets rewritten and rewritten and rewritten, and it ends up looking different because you change the name. You just try changing the names of people.
Right.
People think, well, it's a different document. No, it's all the same. They're just repeating. There's a lot of repetition in ancient documents, depending on culture. It doesn't matter. They always write the same things.
Did you read these online? In other words, did you go someplace that basically you could find these things like
yeah, they're all free, they're all freely available online. You don't have to buy them. When you're buying a book on the Enuma Elish, you're buying somebody else's interpretation.
Yeah, that's not what you want.
That's a real problem.
That's not what you want, because that's their interpretation. That means simply is that they're looking at it, and this is what they think it means. That you want to get back to the original source is what we've always told in college. Go back to the original source, because all these other people are just adding their characteristics, their quote unquote beliefs or whatever they think it is, but it doesn't mean it's you have to go back to the main source, so to speak. So
yeah, you do. It pretty much tells you what it's about. If you know about the principles, the Hermetic principles, you'll start to recognize that it's just delineating them for you in terms of the tree of life. 10 points on the tree of life. Well, Horus is number 10. So you've got the Ennead and Horus, which is a way of showing you the tree of life. The tree of life is the core feature of mystery school teachings, because it comes from a very basic philosophy, which you'll find in the yin yang symbol in the Far East. It's exactly the same. There are two things that work together, and they are opposites. Originally, there's wholeness, then there's a splitting, then there's a reunification. There's the principle of the tree of life in a nutshell. It's that process, and of course, physical nature is all about process. You have to explain that to your students, so you explain it through the basic philosophy, which turns out to be the tree of life. It's very simple. It's very fascinating, and it has turned out to be true. And something that is avoided in general public. I think that there's a wish to keep people confused to a certain extent. Why? I mean, I maybe because people are easier to control and manipulate. When they don't know things for themselves. I think that period of history is basically over. We've now got the internet. We're all talking. We're all expressing. Information is getting out.
Some of it's good and some of it's bad. You can.
Yeah, unfortunately, it gets flooded with misrepresentation and propaganda. I noticed.
Well, everybody has their opinion. Such and such. Their opinion means simply their personal. It's not. Again, like we're saying, it's not a main source. They're just giving you what they think it means. And it's like
and of course, making money is a big deal today. Yeah. And if it makes money to tell people that the Anunnaki are space aliens, and you get 1 million views and you get loads of people coming to you, reading your books, buying your books because you're telling them something fantastical. It doesn't matter if it's not true or not. You're still making money, and there's the problem in today's world concerning truthful issues like this, these scriptures and what have you. They're supposed to be told to you as they are, not made up.
Well, the other ideas go back to the thought of what we call nonfiction and fiction. So life is so difficult on this planet. Many people cannot handle what I would call the non-fictional works. So they want someone to give them a fictional perspective, their own bias, not their bias. Well, it is their bias, but in reality, people don't know that, and they don't want to know that. They want us to simply be told this is what's going to happen. You're going to be okay, that type of thing, and make them feel pretty good or whatever. But in reality, is nonfiction is like the facts. This is what happened supposedly.
Yeah.
Most people do not go to non-fictional works. Now, this goes back to political science. This goes back, history. But when you go to fictional works, it's more of a, and there's not. I also see the fictional part simply as a childlike type of thinking, also, but it can be used in a way for adults to stay in that type of thinking. They didn't ever rise up and think for truth. They don't see that. I want the facts, so to speak. I don't, because we, think about the nursery rhymes. We know there's important things about that, and the Aesop fables and stuff like that, also important, but they're also in this geared towards to the right side of the mind, so to speak. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There's a time for that, such and such, but eventually you have to grow up.
I think there's a great fear in people that if they do spend too much on objective reality, that they might find out that or come to the conclusion that there's nothing after life for them and it's all pointless. And I think people don't want to go there. So they tend to stay in the subjective, happy-go-lucky interpretations of deep things. Because if they do go too far into the reality, it might frighten them. It might disappoint them. They think it will be disappointing, when in fact it's the opposite. It's revelatory instead. But, if you just turn on the TV and listen to the odd scientist, they might give you the impression that science is the greatest God on planet Earth and the sayer of what is objective reality. Right. And if science says there's no God because they can't find him in a laboratory, then there is no God and you're all screwed and you're wasting your time and you're just living for nothing. It's all for nothing. Why don't you just go and kill yourself now? You may as well. There's no point. This is the conclusion of this kind of nonsense. Now, I think people are scared to find out.
I think that's the key. That's the word, fear and scared. People are afraid. The other thing is we talked about long, sometime in the past. People think this is one and done. In other words, what I mean by that, meaning that they're here, they live their life, and that's it. So they don't have to worry about anything in the future. They don't, because the reincarnation is gradually making its way back into thinking somewhat, but most people still are thinking not thinking that way. They're thinking this is one and done. And so I'm here and I just try to make it through. That's it. That's, because life itself is a struggle because simply people have to work. They have to be responsible. And a lot of times people get into alcohol and drugs and stuff like that, to the point simply is it takes them from the objective world, how cruel it can be. People got to have a job to survive. Why is the world that hard? Why is it, you grow up, everything's taken care of you for you. Supposedly in my lifetime, so to speak, my parents took care of me, such and such, but that's also, being, and then also these kids who are coming up, they don't know what parenting means in some ways. They don't understand it. I just have a kid. No, that's a lot of responsibility to have a kid, because that's an extra mouth you got to take care of, but you got to be patient with that child. It's going to do all kinds of things that basically you don't want to do at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Just like your relationship with God in life, everyone has a relationship with God without realizing it. And God is your parent.
Yes.
God, the greatest.
Why do we beg God to help us when we're in a certain situation? We're lost, or we are lost in many ways. We are lost in the woods. Help me, God, to find my way out of here. I mean, it's a very simple thing, but yet we always turn to God. It's almost as though there's a seed planted within us that to look to God for help. And it doesn't matter the name. That's not the point here. I'm not, you see. So there's this whole idea. It's a very childlike thinking. But I know that I do that. I'm out in the woods and I get lost or something happens. And I'm like, oh no, you start getting frantic, or my car doesn't start. I got to go to work. What am I going to do now? So it's still this childlike type of thinking. Not that it's always bad, because simply it's showing a lifeline to you and God. That's there. It's already in you in a way that reveals it simply as you can. In some ways, your spirit is from that. And that's the question I want to ask before I forget. Because I always forget this: the issue of spirit and soul, because I get confused.
Right. I think the only reason there's a distinction between the two words is semantically an old way of referring to somebody who isn't ascended yet. So if you're unascended as of yet, you're referred to as a soul.
Okay.
And a soul is under the auspice of the objective creator. A spirit, the idea is when you ascend, you are born into spirit, and you go from being a soul to being a spirit. The real distinction is in your knowledge of what is what, because before you ascend, you don't know about these things, but when you ascend, you do. You have spiritual information or knowledge, so you are referred to in spiritual terms and not in soul terms. So an unascended person is a soul in the body. This is just a reference, a way of referring to a distinction between people who are ascended or not, as I've found out. So, this soul is in trouble. Well, they're not ascended yet. That's why they're in trouble. This spirit has no problems. That's right, because they've become spirit. See, we overcome, and the same as before. We mentioned just a couple of minutes ago about your status as a person. Worrying about things like your car not starting begs the question: what really matters? Does it matter that your car doesn't start? Aren't you going to fix it in a day or two anyway? And everyone's going to be happy again, that you maybe didn't go to work today because of it. He'll only be upset for the day, your boss. Next day, you're back in, everything's fine again. Right. So did it really matter? Do you see what I mean?
No, but in the moment you think, oh my God, I can't go anywhere, I can't get to work, such and such.
Yeah, like it's just not. It's normal, Everyone thinks like that, really.
That's also you call the word. These are tribulations, so to speak, in your life. In other words,
they can be storms in teacups. But everything in life begs the question: what really matters? And that painting you showed me earlier of Jesus with a walking stick and the cloak. With an illuminated head, obviously that's a person. Yeah, that it's upside down, Brent.
Sorry.
There we are.
That's like, okay.
So you see, there's a light behind his head or coming from his head, and he's wearing. He looks like he doesn't own the property that he's walking through. There, he's not a property owner. He's on his own. And he stands alone. There's his walking stick, his staff, as it were, like a wizard. The idea being this person has realized what really matters. The car in the driveway doesn't matter as much as one's ascension.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
So the question is, what really matters in life? All these things that people complain about, they don't really matter.
Yeah, because my milk is spoiled or whatever, all kinds of things of nature. We do all this. We become, and I know that in my own self. Simply, I'm spoiled because simply, okay, my milk goes bad or something like that. Well, that's not the end of the world. You can go to the grocery store and get more. You don't have to have milk today. You can eat something else, so to speak. So it's again, this attitude of we've been cuddle so much, maybe in some ways. I don't know if it's that. It's just the way we think we are supposed to be. Maybe it's also to do with us being supposedly in a free world, a free country, that others don't have that luxury. You see,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But it all depends on the way you are. The more childish a person is, the worse reaction they're going to have to something simple going wrong, for instance, because everything goes wrong in life anyway. The question is, how do you deal with it? That reveals where you're at in terms of your maturity. If you just, an older person might just, if something goes wrong, they'll just say, that's all right, I'll be all right next week. That's it. That's all they do. But a child might start crying and pulling its hair out because it thinks the world is ending.
Right. I've done that before. Sure. I've done.
Yeah, we all have.
Pull my hair out. I don't know what to do. I remember did a favor for somebody, took care of their little daughter or baby, such and such, and I had to change the diaper. And I changed the diaper, and then the child started crying. And I'm like, okay, I solved the problem here. I changed the diaper, did everything I was supposed to do. And I'm like, why are you crying? And I'm like, I'm trying to do faces and and the child's still wag. And I'm like, and I'm like, see, my world is already crumbling before me because I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm like pulling my hair out, just like you were talking about. What am I? I try to sing a song, such and such, but I'm not a good singer. So guess what? That doesn't go. And so that's why you see some guys sometimes they sort of get this they wind this toy up and such, and it starts making this noise. This little song, such and such. Well, I wasn't even thinking about that, but that would have been a great thing. That's how you usually put them back to sleep, so to speak. But I remember that distinctly. It's like pulling my hair out. It's like, what am I going to do? And I'm sitting in my head. It's like,
Okay. But when you know, you can stay calm and smile and just get things done because you know how it works. Yeah.
Well, a mom can deal with that. So I'm thinking about the child again. The mom knows that simply instinctively. This is what happens. It doesn't pull his hair out. She doesn't pull her hair out. She knows what to do, or understands that she needs to console that child, and da da da, and da da da, and next thing you know, the child's back at peace. But I don't have children. Men don't have children. So.
Same with life. I think same with life. As an angel, you look at life and you realize what it is, what it truly is, and so nothing upsets you anymore. If you get my drift, you're the person who knows and can just smile and shrug things off in 2 seconds, knowing where things go, as it were.
That's interesting when you say that. I think about a guy I used to room with. And he had that certain personality. It about drove me nuts. It's just like, we need to be there at 10 o'clock, or we're supposed to be there at 6 o'clock. It's now 6:30.
Yeah.
No problem. Like, but it is a problem because we're supposed to be there. it's like, this whole, when I went to Mexico City, it's interesting that you mentioned this, and I won't get off too much of a tangent here, but it's a different makeup when I was in Mexico City, helping out an issue with a small little church and doing work outside. And their whole approach to life is far more, I wouldn't say, it's not lazy. It's just maybe a lackadaisical. It's okay. They take a siesta. Okay. Siesta is a couple hours long. It's like, okay, well, ours only Americans think, oh, it's only 30 minutes, get back to the work here. And they're enjoying themselves. Like, what's wrong with these people? Are they lazy? No, it's just simply part of the cultural way they've been, but also simply is we'll get to it when we get to it. And it's like, we're not on a schedule. So this is the English way of looking at things, or even maybe other places. Oh, we got this thing to do, schedule, This is done by 2 o'clock. If it's not done, we're behind schedule. We need to hurry up. That type. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's how I work. I work to schedules. Yeah, and I want it done when it says so on the schedule. Not 2 hours later, because
that's right. I want you to be here the same way you call a plumber or whatever. Well, you're supposed to be here at 10 o'clock. It's 12 o'clock now. Like, okay, there's no excuses here.
What if you turn up to work an hour late every day? You can't get away with that.
No, you can't.
That's no use.
Anyway, we've gotten off on a little bit of tangent. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Let's see what else I was going to think about is because we've gone now. We've got an hour and 15 minutes roughly.
Right.
Now, I could go into other questions. I don't know. I don't want to. I have other questions. A lot of it's to do with like some of the things that on the science field, but I don't know if I want to put that into this particular video.
Right. We can talk about that next time, because we spoke about that in an email about quantum mechanics and how it's misunderstood. It is. You learn properly about quantum mechanics in university, and when you look at the commercial nature of it, you realize that people are making things up and misinterpreting even that. And they're telling you that things like the world is an illusion, and then that's all they say. And you think, well, how am I supposed to understand that statement? The world is an illusion. Are you telling me it doesn't matter, therefore I can just go and do whatever I want and nothing matters? Is that what you're saying?
Because that's what comes across as. Right.
Or is it the world is not the real world? It's not the truth. Ah, that's more like it. It's not the truth. What do you mean by truth? Well, truth is not physical. Aha. Now we're getting philosophical. Now you're in the right ballpark. Now you're not telling me to forget about the world and don't care about anything. It's a completely different conclusion.
Yes, there's a form of what I would call, just like we were talking about a little earlier, just escape. People want to escape also.
Yeah. Not face reality. Yeah, because they think it's dark and foreboding, when in fact it's kind and loving in the root. You know, because people think reality is represented by the physical world, and the physical world is indifferent. It's completely indifferent.
It's indifferent to your attitudes, your whatever way you're thinking is indifferent.
The entire world is just summed up by this cup of coffee. You know, the cup of coffee is not going to cry if I drop dead. It doesn't care if I'm alive or dead, but I'm still going to use it. It's objective. Right. That's why. Right. So people think objective reality is the reality when it's not. It's actually God is the reality. The reality is God. I don't know whether that's obvious, but it becomes obvious as an angel. You realize, you know, that that's the reality, and all this is just an objective means to an end.
Yeah, this idea simply is that, you know, people say, you know, like God simply say, well, show himself. You know, there's the attitude, well, show yourself, show who you are. It's like, you know, like if you're God, you say, I don't have to prove anything to you.
That's right. That's right.
Prove anything to you. Who are you?
Right.
Which reveals a lot of arrogant attitude for people. Simply prove yourself, such and such.
Yeah.
And what I understand part of it simply is that the angel such and such. And I remember listening to something you said was kind of interesting. I didn't even know this. There are different things that angels do on this, even on this planet. They're angels. And you are an angel yourself, but you do something that pretty much no one else does.
Right. We each have our own job. Yeah, you get your own job to do. Right. Yeah, that's right.
Right. Yeah. And some are here to do certain things to lift mankind up in a different way. That is to understand themselves better.
Yeah.
But they basically, if I understand it correctly, they've gone through what you've done, the same thing.
Yeah, every angel, even if they're reincarnated, has ascended in their personal history at some point. They've gone through ascension. They know it. And coming back, you have to take a new body. There's a lot to say about this. Taking a new body,
right?
Yeah, you have to relearn. You have to relearn from scratch. But it's easier when you've already done it before. Right. So you advance higher or further than anybody else, and that's a sign that you've become an angel in the past.
Right. Right.
See.
Because you mentioned something that I listened to one of your videos. It's like you said that the angels actually make planets livable. In other words, they are there to make. There's a planet that basically, I gather, has been created, and we won't go into all that. But I'm saying simply, it's there. It needs to be basically developed, just like a house would be developed. It would be livable.
Yeah.
Plants, all that stuff. That's done by angels.
Yeah. Cultivators. Yeah. We cultivate and you develop. You're a gardener, basically. It's like gardening.
Right.
It's exactly the same.
To make the planet habitable. In other words, to be able to, people could actually come there and then live there.
Yeah, that's right.
That's already right. Yeah. So my thought was simply I didn't know that in some ways. I thought that God would come in and he just simply did all this stuff and did it, you know, like boom. But that's not what happens.
No, it's through us, basically. Yeah, angels are the manifestation of God in the physical world. That they are the God brought forth, as it were, who is now the great gardener. Yeah, in different ways. There's different ways you can apply the metaphor of gardening.
Okay.
You know, I can develop a planet with a load of other angels. You know, you call us extraterrestrials in that sense, or I can just discuss metaphysics with a variety of people. In both cases, I'm gardening.
Right.
It's the same metaphor each time.
Yeah. See? Right.
Yeah.
What you're doing is you're like someone. Each person is like someone is a helper to help mankind to improve their life in some way. You got a phone call? or a
Yeah, I
message?
got a text from the other half.
Okay.
Okay, she's just telling me when she's due. Okay, no worries. That's it. Cool.
Okay. So you know, you told me you've been here quite a few times doing the same thing. Is that
No, not
correct?
necessarily here on Earth.
Oh,
Apparently I've done this. Yeah, I've done this over 20 times. It's become my sort of job, as it were, to go to somewhere, ascend, and teach ascension. That's the idea.
okay. Okay.
Anyway, just to focus on that. It's probably because I've done it so many times. You
And
know,
you're probably the only person that does this. Is that correct? On this planet?
specifically this, yeah, specifically so far. So far, I don't know what else goes on in the world. I don't know everyone, you see. So maybe there is something else that I haven't found
Okay.
yet, or somebody else. But angels inherently know what they're doing anyway, even if they haven't ascended when they've come back. They don't have to ascend again. They only
Right.
do
You
it
said
once.
they could actually don't even have to ascend here. They could go
No.
somewhere else.
Well,
They could,
they've already ascended in the past, so heaven
right.
is made for them. Therefore, their home is heaven, and you associate with that anyway. So
Right.
you are a positive person, no matter how bad your experiences are. They don't turn you evil. See,
Right.
you can have temporary setbacks, and you can have temporarily attitude changes or disturbed attitudes, because angels are attacked by demons as well. That there's all sorts of things, that want to make their life a living hell or want to try and kill them. There's this sort of thing as well. Most of the time, we're protected from all that, and we only get it if it means we're going to grow up in the right way.
Right.
But an angel will respond well overall to bad experiences, whereas a non-angel might respond in a very bad way, and it might make them worse until they get better. There's a lot of psychology involved when you're incarnated as well. You have to deal with in these terms. It's very psychological, I feel.
It's when you come here, do you have what I call when you reincarnate here? Do you choose your parents, or are your parents chosen for you?
I would say you definitely choose your parents, but there'll be various reasons for that. It's not always the same reason.
Okay.
For example, I might choose if I'm coming here to have a certain life. I need to become I don't know, something that requires your parents to be fairly wealthy. There are
Okay.
certain pursuits that we can't do if we're born to a poor family.
Right.
So you choose a wealthy family because it allows you to pursue a certain thing, to develop in a certain way on the planet. And we're all putting into this planetary development thing by developing ourselves. We automatically develop the rest of the planet, as it were. New information, new knowledge, for instance. Scientists 100 years ago, scientists were people who were born to wealthy families because they had the money to educate
I
their
had the
child.
money to educate the child. Right.
So the child becomes a scientist, and the scientist does something world-changing. They discover something new, etc., etc. So it depends on your circumstances. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. I was born to people who weren't wealthy because I've never needed money. The
Right.
things I've done had nothing to do with money.
Right.
Therefore, I didn't need that.
Right.
You see. So it all depends on what you're doing and why you're here.
But
If you're
let me ask you another quick question. Those who not ascended, and they come back and reincarnate,
Yeah,
do
I'm afraid
they?
they do. They do, yeah. It might not necessarily be on the same planet. It depends on what they need, and it depends on them as well. I mean, most people don't want to come to Earth, apparently, because it's so difficult. But they're kind of forced to.
Yeah,
There's
we talked about that. They're sort of forced to. In other words,
yeah, there is an objectivity to it as well. And don't forget, there is no such thing as death anyway. So someone who's coming in is not going to be saying, well, if I go there, I'm going to die at some point. Yeah, but everyone does. It's normal. It's not on your mind. That comes by itself. What you're going to be thinking of is, what am I here to do? Therefore, I need this, this, and this.
so what I'm saying is simply is what I'm thinking of my own self. So to say, I chose a family, such and such, I chose to be born with. I have a brother who's a year and a day apart from me, and both of us are quote unquote Aries.
Mm,
Okay, so obviously that was done for a purpose because I see that even now at my age, saying there was a purpose in why my brother was here, such and such,
mm,
to help me in some ways to see certain things, and something that basically prodded me along in this direction. And
mm,
I see that in my own life going back. Why did I go to seminary for? Okay, I'm looking for that truth, or looking for answers, so to speak,
mm,
and all the things that have characterized basically what's happened to me in my life. I grew up in a. I didn't grow up in a rich family. I grew up in a certain time that basically my family were Christians. Okay, what does that mean? Such and such. Well, as I've said before, simply I accepted that very young age, and accepted Jesus in my heart. Da da da. And I thought that was it. Da da
right.
da. And but what happens simply is as you progress, you're not progressing, but you believe what you're being taught by the church in some ways, that you're in the family, so to speak. But in reality, you begin to look at it, and like we're doing, no, you're not in the family. You're not being told the whole truth here.
Mm,
So it's like a waking up type of thing. Oh, I see. So these things and what I thought was true literally are not true. You see,
mm,
you
mm,
see. And the Bible has been important. I used to have, like you were talking about, different references Bibles. I had the NIV, I had the New American Standard Bible, I had the um, what's the other one? I had a Bible called the Schofield Bible, which is written with notes in it from Schofield.
mm,
Uh, I've done videos about that and basically said, that's not true. Schofield is this type of person. But anyway, that's not the point. The other thing simply is that um, there are Bibles that are New Age Bible. I bought one there, kind of interested in that at one time. So I bought
mm,
all these things simply trying to find out certain things, and yet I
yeah,
wasn't satisfied. It wasn't satisfied. I
yeah,
wasn't getting answers. So it's
yeah,
like, but this is like the needle in the haystack, so to speak, too, isn't it?
yeah. That's right. That's right. You have to look and compare. And yeah, one of the greatest comparisons I had was when I read Kabbalah for the first time. I instantly recognized it for some reason, and just took it on as my own, realizing it was probably true. But the contrast between it and Christianity was quite great, and that caused an issue for me.
Oh,
So I went into science to see if I could validate either of them, and I ended up validating Kabbalah,
okay,
which led in the end to the validation of Christianity. But obviously, the semantics get in the way
right,
of understanding it, that it's the same. The Bible is effectively Kabbalah, a book of Kabbalah. But if you tell Christians that, they'll reject it because they think
right, right,
Kabbalah is the occult,
right.
and it's
Well,
used.
you talk about even a little bit of astrology, they'll think the same thing, because the cult simply means what was it? What is it?
Hidden,
Hidden, right, right.
hidden information. Yeah, that's
Hidden
all.
information. Right.
That's right. It's not evil. It's just hidden.
Hidden. But they see truth as being not hidden. You see, that's what they say. See, they don't understand. It's all it contains in the Bible, which it
Right.
does. The problem is that
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with the Bible. It's just
yeah,
simply is that if we read it a certain way and come over a
yeah,
presupposition, we miss the whole meaning.
yeah.
Now, you tell me if you got to go. I won't keep you here. You got these
That's
little
okay.
noises.
Yeah, I need to go and have a conversation.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry about that.
that's okay. All right, no problem. So is there anything else? Maybe I'll ask you some questions online, not online, but I'll send you some questions that I want to ask today. Didn't ask.
Sure.
Um, I was going to say something else. So, what is there the next week? You think there's availability, or maybe a couple
Yeah,
weeks?
yeah. I mean, the fact that I'm here now tells you that all our work is done. Basically, I haven't stopped since I last spoke to you. I've worked all day, every single day, and really, I haven't had a single day off. Thank God I can cope. But now I'm finally getting time where I've got free time.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I fixed the roof this
I
morning.
know. Are you still working on that too?
No, that's done. That's done. It took about half an hour. It was just flashing. I had to put new flashing on.
You flashing around the chimney or whatever the fire.
Well, on the edge of the roof, they have concrete slabs and they're joined together just by being pushed together. And it had old flashing. It's a sort of bitumen sticky stuff you put on there to close the gap and have no cracks so water can't get in.
Water can come in, right?
Yeah, but one of them had a crack in it. I went up with a roofer last week and he showed me, and I saw there's a crack in this flashing. And it's directly over where there's a leak coming into the wall, and you can see a registration of water behind the wall.
Right.
So I had to fix that, and I did that this morning, as well as planting 2 things in the garden.
Yeah, you need to be careful that the water comes in the house. Depending on the material, it can create mold, which can be.
Yeah, it's to prevent all those problems in the future when it starts to rain again, because we've been dry recently. Yeah.
Right. So
anyway, yeah. So I'm still at it, but we're nearly done. It's basically done. I've only got to put some shelves up now and put some books on them, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Thank God.
So what was the name of the book you were telling me that you earlier to do with going back to not Chaldean, but to Babylon?
The Enuma Elish.
Yeah.
The Enuma Elish. Means when on high. Meaning when ascended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just got it's just got a message such and such from somebody here, but it's not. I don't think it's a question. Let's see what it says real quick. I'm going to have to go. I mean, you got to go. So,
Happy Easter. Okay? Thank you very much.
Happy Easter. Okay. So that's what it is. That's what the message. So, till maybe next week, same time.
Yeah, we should be able to. I don't see why not. Yeah, I'm around. I'm off Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Okay. So any of those days should be fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Phil, for your time. Thank you for your
my pleasure. Thanks for being there as well. It's always nice.
Appreciate you being here. Well, good to see you.
Yeah.
You don't look like you've lost any weight, although you look like you gained a little bit of a beard more. So I don't know.
Oh, I probably haven't shaved.
Well, it's been a while.
Yeah, it has.
I'm picking on you. But anyway, I'll let you go. Thank you for your time. Okay, Phil.
Thanks.
Good seeing you. Glad you're here.
Yeah, okay. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, how do we get out? Got it. Okay.